lendaba indaba eyinqaba.
This is an amazing story.
Kuzo zonke imifanekiso ekhulunywa nguJesu angiboni ukuthi khona edidayo njengale.
It's very interesting, and I don't know if there's any other parable which the Lord shared that is as confusing as this one, or causes as much confusion as this one does.
Abantu uma befunda lento iyathanda ukubadida ithi hawu Nkosi ingani ayilungile lento ayisile lento eyenziwe lo muntu manje umncoma kanjani ukuthi wenze into enhle.
Many are confused when they read this parable because they say, but Lord, what this man did was not right. He wasn't right in what he did, and yet you commend him.
Le ndaba ibizwa ngokuthi indaba yomfanekiso wenceku engathembekile.
And the title, or they call this parable the parable of the unjust steward.
uJesu uthi bekhona umuntu ocebile oyisigwili esikhulu.
And the Lord spoke this parable about this certain rich man.
Ube no manager omsebenzelayo.
Who had this manager working for him.
Kwahambe wezwa amahemhemu ukuthi akathembekile emsebenzini wakhe.
And after some time, he heard people saying that this manager was not faithful in his work.
Akalungile.
He's unjust.
Kodwa khona lapho inkosi isithi ibilungile ibonga ukwenza kwayo.
And yet afterwards the Lord commends this man for what he did.
Ikho le ndaba indaba ethanda ukuthi ibe lukhuni kuba izwakale.
That's why it's so difficult for many to understand this parable.
Manje lesi sigwili bekuyisigwili esikhulu.
This man was extremely wealthy.
Umanager wakhe ubesuka anike abantu izinto.
This manager had been giving people things.
Abanike noma amazambane,
perhaps potatoes,
noma patata,
or sweet potatoes,
ebanike ukudla,
food.
Kwahamba kwezwakala kuye umniniyo ukuthi umanager wakhe akalungile. Uyasuka abanike nje abantu izinto asaphaze ukudla kwakho.
And so it happened after a while that the man heard these accusations against his manager that he was just giving away things and wasting his goods.
Isigwili sasuka samema sambiza.
So the rich man called him in.
Athi ngiyezwa ukuthi awuthembekile, awulungile, usuke ubanike nje abantu okutholayo.
And the man said to the manager, he said, I hear that you aren't faithful, that you're unjust, and that you're just giving away things.
Wathi usuphelelwe umsebenzi.
And he fired him, told him that he's out of a job.
Uma esemxoshile wacabanga umanager inceku le eyayisiza abantu ake ngisuke ngibanike ngokusheshsha.
So after the manager got the notice of his dismissal, he thought about it and he thought, well, let me do something quickly now.
Athi awungitshele isikweletu sakho enkosini yami ingakanani.
He said to the first man, how much do you owe my master?
Uthi hawu sokungamalitha noma amagalani ayikhulu.
And he said he owes him 100 measures of oil.
Why said, oh kulungile ke bhala masisha ukuthi isikweleti sakho amafutha owanika abantu izitsha ezingamashumi ayisihlanu.
And then he said to the man, here, take your bill and sit down and write quickly that you now owe him only 50.
Wayesebiza omunye athi awungitshele wena sangakunika into engakanani.
And then he called in the second man and he said to him, well, how much have I given you?
Sangakunika ukolweni ongakanani.
How much wheat have I given you?
Wathi ilinganiso ezikhulu.
And he said to him, 100 measures of wheat.
Wathi bhala phansi ukuthi ngakunika ilinganiso ezingamashumi awu-80 kuphela.
Then he said, well, sit down and you write down that you now owe 80 measures of wheat. That's the amount that I had given you.
Manje umanager lo ubethi njengoba inkosi yami ecebile uma ikuzwa lokhu uyongixosha.
So the manager, when he had heard that he was being dismissed,
wathi angisakwazi ukumba sengimdala.
He said, I'm too old to dig.
Futhi angikwazi kuya kubantu kube yisicela nkobe ngivele ngicele nje.
And I'm too ashamed to be a beggar, to go and beg people to help me.
Kodwa ngizodalisa ngibasize ngalesi sikweleti sabo bathola isikweleti esincane.
Then he thought of this plan that he would reduce the debt which they owed.
Khona ngizodala ubuhlobo ukuba noma ngixoshwe bangibukele laba bantu ezindlini zabo ngingahlali phandle endle.
And he thought that if I do that, I'll make friends with them, and when I have lost my job, at least I'll have these friends who'll take me into their homes.
Inkosi yancoma lenceku engathembekile yancoma yatha abantu balelizwe bahlakaniphile kunabantu bokukhanya.
And the master commended the unjust steward because the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light.
Abafarisi uma bezwa lento bambhuqa.
But the Pharisees, when they heard the story, they derided the Lord.
bamhleka insini,
They mocked him.
bameyisa
They laughed at him
ngoba bona bebethanda imali.
because they were lovers of money.
Basuke bameyisa manje.
And now so they derided him.
Kodwa inkosi yasuka yayincoma lenceku yathi hlakaniphile kusho ukuthi noma ixoshwa izoba nendawo yokuhlala.
But the master commended this steward because of how shrewdly he acted, because he paved the way that they would take him into their homes.
Ihlakaniphile.
He had acted shrewdly.
Uma uyibukisisa le ndaba ungathi ayikhona ayenzanga kahle.
Now, if you look at this story, you would say this man did not act in the right way.
Ingani ubengathembekile,
He was unjust,
ibingalungile,
unfaithful.
kodwa inkosi iyamncoma.
Yet the Lord commended him.
Athi abantwana babe balelizwe bahlakaniphile kunabantu bokhanya.
And commented that the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light.
Manje kufanele ukuthi sibe nombuzo ukuthi ngani ukuba inkosi isuke ibonge lenceku engathembekile.
Now, why would the master commend this unjust steward?
Kungani ukuba inkosi imbonge kodwa abafarisi bambhuqa bamhleka insini bameyisa?
Why did the Lord comment positively? And yet the Pharisees, they derided him. They cheeked him for it.
Abafarisi bebethanda imali.
The Pharisees loved money.
Inkosi akekho ngakhonza amakhosi amabili, awukwazi ukukhonza uNkulunkulu ubuye ukhonze nemali umamoni ongalungile.
The Lord said, you cannot serve two masters, two gods. You can't serve God and mammon or money.
Mina ngokubona kwami ngibona ukuthi ibilungile lenceku engathembekile ngoba ibibuka ikusasa layo.
Now, I think what the unjust servant did rightly and correctly was that he thought about his future.
Ubecabanga ikusasa lakhe ukuthi lona liyoba nhloboni.
He considered what his future would be like.
Kuyahlupha ngoba abantu abacabangi ikusasa labo.
The problem is with so many people, they don't worry about the future.
Abanandaba nekusasa labo.
They don't care about the future.
Abacabangi ngengaphakathi iphakathe labo.
They don't think of what the future holds
And the eternity.
and eternity.
Kodwa lena lapho sisekuhluphekeni yacabanga ukuthi hey uma Sangiphelelwe konke enginakho. Ngingenandawo yokuhlala. Ngizohlalaphi?
But this man, when he was in a fix, he suddenly started thinking, what am I going to do? What's going to happen to me? Where will I end up? Where will I stay?
Kuso lesi sahluko kaLuka 16 siyafunda indaba kaDevas.
In this chapter, Luke 16, we also read about the rich man
Kanye noLazaro.
and Lazarus.
Isigwili cabanganga ngekusasa lalo.
Even that rich man did not think about the future.
Kodwa uma esesha esikhokweni wacabanga abafowabo abayisihlanu. Wathi nabo beza la kule ndawo engikuyo mina.
But when he was burning in hell, he suddenly thought about his 5 brothers, and he thought, they heading straight for this place that I'm in.
Abafarisi bebembuka bemhleka ngokuxoxa le ndaba ngoba bebethanda imali bengacabangi kusasa labo.
And remember how the Pharisees mocked the Lord. They derided him, they laughed at him, because they loved money. And they also didn't think about their future.
Kuhle ukuthi umuntu acabange ngekusasa lakhe.
It's good to think about where you're heading, about your future.
Akukuhle uphile nje uthi unokudla ucebile awuswele lutho ungacabangi kusasa lakho.
It's not good if you just think, well, I'm okay, I've got enough food to eat, I've got everything I need, and you don't think about where you're heading, what your future holds.
uDevasi ubeqoka okuhle nelinini usuku nosuku edla nokudla okumnandi uLazaro engenalutho.
The rich man had the finest clothes, he ate the best food, and Lazarus had nothing. He didn't even have food to eat.
Kodwa uLazaro ubecabanga ngekusasa lakhe. Kodwa isigwili cha.
Yet Lazarus thought about his future, whereas the rich man didn't.
Isigwili uma sesifile sathathwa sayiswe esikhokweni.
When the rich man died, he was taken to hell.
Lapho esesikhokweni wathi ubaba Abrahama nginabafowethu abayisihlanu nabo beza la kule ndawo. Ngiyacela ukuba uthuma uLazaro ahamba khulume nabo bangezi kule ndawo.
And when he was in hell, he lifted up his eyes and he called out to Abraham. He said, Father Abraham, I have 5 brothers. They also headed for this place. Send Lazarus to warn them that they don't end up here.
Uyabona isigwili uDevasi akacabanga ngekusasa lakhe.
You see, the rich man hadn't thought about his future.
Kusho ukuthi ube njengesiyula.
He was like a fool.
Ukukhonza imali ubethanda imali kuthiwa akekho umuntu ongakhonza amakhosi amabili akekho ongakhonza imali akhonze noNkulunkulu.
His God was money. And as it says, you cannot serve God and serve money.
Kodwa lapho esesha esikhokweni wayesecabanga abafowabo abayisihlanu beza la kodwa kabacabanganga esahamba emhlabeni.
Only when he was burning in hell, he suddenly thought about his brothers. While he was still on earth, while he was alive, he didn't worry about his brothers in that way.
Uyabona ke ukuthi lo muntu indaba yakhe siyitholayo lapha uJesu wamncoma ngoba noma ethatha ukudla lapha kusisigwili ubecabanga ikusasa.
But then we find that unjust servant, that he was commended because he took actions in the light of the future, thinking about the future, what that would hold for him.
Umuntu ocabanga ngekusasa lakhe uJesu uyambonga.
The Lord commends someone who thinks about his future.
Ingani uMose wabala insuku zakhe wakhumbula ukuthi liyeza usuku lwami lokuhamba, uNkulunkulu emncoma, uNkulunkulu emsiza. Kodwa umuntu ongacabanga ikusasa lakhe maye kuye.
Moses numbered his days. He thought about death and what time he still had left here on earth. And the Lord also commended him for it.
Wena uma ucabanga indaba yasezweni nje, ucabanga indaba yanamuhla, unokudla, unemali, uphila kahle, kodwa awuhlakaniphile emehlweni kaJesu.
If you just live for the here and now, just about today's needs, so that you have food and you have clothing, and that's all you think about, the Lord will say about you, you are not wise, you're a fool.
Kusho ukuthi asifunde noma le ndaba uyibona ukuthi hey ibingalungile, ibilungile ngoba ubecabanga ikusasa.
So while we consider this matter, and you may think, but what he did was not right, yet what you can learn from it, and learn from this man, is that he thought about his future.
Isigwili esikhulu yezwa ngamahemhemu ukuthi kwangathi ayithembekile lenceku, iyasuka ithathe ibanike abantu.
The rich man had heard from others, the talk was going around, that they were saying that this manager is unfaithful, he's unjust, he's taking
Kanti
things.
empeleni bekufanele ukuthi isigwili lapho sifike sithi hawu ndoda sihlale phansi ake sixoxe, ngizwa ukuthi awuthembekile, uvela uthatha izinto uyinike abantu.
And even the rich man, he could have approached it differently. He could have called in this man and he said, I'm hearing these stories about you wasting my goods and just giving them away.
Imchazele ukuthi hayi Nkosi yami, ukuze ngikwenze lokhu ngikwenza ngoba ngicabanga ikusasa lami.
And then given him an opportunity to respond, and then he could have explained and said, look, I'm doing it because I'm thinking of my future.
Futhi laba bantu engibanika lento ngiyabasiza ukuze esikhathini esizayo bangahlupheki, babe nakho.
And maybe saying to him that I'm helping these people because they're in need of help, that they don't have a problem in the future.
Kodwa yena cha uvela umdilikela phezu kwakhe ethile oyenzayo engizwayo, ngizwa usuke ubanike nje ukudla. Akahlalanga phansi naye axoxe naye, ngoba mhlawumbe naye ubezokhuluma ukuthi uyazi ucabanga indaba enhle uyangicabangisa ukuba nathi asihleli la emhlabeni siyadlula kufanele ukuthi sicabange ikusasa lethu.
But the rich man didn't give this man an opportunity to respond and explain his side of the story. Maybe if he'd have not just fired him on the spot, he would have heard what this manager had to say, and maybe even bought into the idea and said, but it's correct, that's what we should be doing, and that's what I should be doing too.
Zikhona izinto oyibonayo ngathi azilungile kanti zilungile phambi kwakho uNkulunkulu.
There are things which you would consider unjust, and when God looks at it, He says it's justified.
uNkulunkulu ethi into enhle le ayimbi.
That even God would say, but it's not wrong what He has done.
Ngoba abantu bonke bangathi bekuyinceku engathembekile engalungile kodwa uJesu uyambonga, uJesu uyamncoma, uJesu uthi wenze kahle.
Because everyone else accused this man of doing something that was wrong. Yet the Lord didn't just condemn him and even said that he did something good.
Abafarisi baze bambhuqa bathi imbi lento bameyisa kodwa uJesu wathi kukahla kwenzile.
The Pharisees had a problem with it though. They said, no, it's wrong. They didn't like it at all. But that was not how the Lord saw it.
Thina singabukisisi into sithi imbi kanti ayimbi kuNkulunkulu.
We can look at a matter and say, this is wrong. And yet God doesn't say so.
Singathi lungile kanti kuNkulunkulu ayilungile.
And then again, we can say something is good, and yet it's not good in God's sight.
Asiqaphelisise sivivinye izinto ngoba kukhona izinto esibonayo kwathi zimbi kanti uJesu uthi zinhle.
We need to ask the Lord for discernment. Yet, because otherwise we'll end up saying something is wrong and evil, and the Lord doesn't see it in that way.
Qaphelisise vivinya ungathi hayi kodwa lokho akukuhle kanti phambi kwakhe uNkulunkulu kuhle kodwa kumuntu kubi.
So you need to test the thing and have discernment. Lest you say something is wrong and God says this is not wrong, it's good.
Kukhona umfundisi uDokotela Campbell Morgan.
Dr. Campbell Morgan.
Ubevakashela umuzi othile wesigwili esikhulu umuntu okholwayo ongumzalwane.
He once visited a very wealthy man who was a believer.
Tambama uma bengakalali bebefunda iBhayibheli bathandaza.
Before they went to bed, they had a time where they read from the Bible and prayed together.
Awu ubaba wekhaya owesigwili wathandaza umthandazo phambili.
And the host, this wealthy man, he prayed a wonderful prayer.
Athandazele ama-missionary, athandazele abahedeni.
He prayed for the missionaries and for the heathen, the unbelievers.
Ethandaza umthandazo oyisimanga kungathi umthandazo weingelosi.
It was a wonderful, angelic prayer.
Uma eseqedile ukuthandaza,
When he finished praying,
indodana yakhe eyi-teenage
his teenage son
yathi, hawu baba, uthandazile umthandazo omuhle, ozwakalayo, othandekayo.
said, "Oh, Father, that was a wonderful prayer.
You prayed a wonderful prayer tonight. But while you prayed, I thought if I'd have your bank book, I would answer only half of your prayers." Wathi, baba, ngizwile umthandazo wakho isimanga. Kodwa uma ngaba nemali nebhuku lakho lemali, i-checkbook, bengizophendula uhafu nje womthandazo wakho. Angazi ukuthi kuyezwakala yini lokho.
Do you understand?
Umuntu ube yisigwili,
He was a wealthy man,
ube thandaza umthandazo oyisimanga,
prayed a wonderful prayer,
kodwa noma ekhulekela ama-missionary, noma ekhulekela abahedeni, uthi, baba, uma kungathiwa ngaba uNkulunkulu, bengingenakuphendula umthandazo wakho ngokupheleleyo, bengizophendula uhafu nje.
because even though he prayed in that way, praying for the missionaries and all the heathen people, yet the son said, "Father, I'd only answer half of your prayer if I was the Lord."
uNkulunkulu wakhuluma ngengane, yathi, baba, yebo uyathandaza kahle, uyabakhulekela abafundisi, ama-missionary, uyakhulekela futhi abahedeni, kodwa imali igcwele esikhwameni, ayikho ithathayo unikele ngayo.
See, God spoke through this child to the father when he said, "But Father, you pray for them, but you've got all this money in the bank. Why don't you use some of it to help them as well?"
Kukhona umfundisi engimaziyo,
I know a preacher
watshintshelwa waya le kude eFreystad,
who was posted to a place in the Free State.
ehamba nengane zakhe incane, ingane zakhe seyikhulile lapha kithina.
And he went there with some of his children who were still small at the time. They're grown up now, and some of them are here.
Ngesinye isikhathi bebengenakho ukudla okudliwayo,
There were
beswela ukudla.
There were times when they had no food.
Unina ubehamba ezofuna imfino, ezofuna nje ukuhlaza, akupheke kube ngathi isopho, ingane zakhe ziphile ngakho.
And the mother went out into the fields just looking for any type of plant or weed which she could cook and to give the children something.
Bebengenakho ukudla,
They had no,
kodwa abantu babakhulekela bathi, hawu Nkosi basize, Nkosi bagcine, kanti bebengenalutho.
so they were there without food, yet there were people praying for them, saying, "Lord, help them and carry them through," while they had nothing.
Indodana le eyi-teenage yezwa umthandazo isimanga sikayise ekhulekela ama-missionary, ekhulekela nabahedeni. Kodwa indodana yathi, baba, uma ngingaqonda i-checkbook lakho bengizophendula half kuphela, ngoba abaswela ukudla bona wena unakho uyabancisha.
So this teenage son, when he heard that wonderful prayer of his father, that was his response. He said, Father, if I was the Lord, I'd only answer half if I had a bank balance like yours.
Abanye balezo ngane bayafundisa la esikoleni namhlanje noma ngingenakusho amagama abo.
Now some of those children, they've grown up. Some of them are even helping here in the school. I won't mention their names.
uNkulunkulu wababusisa nokho abazali
And God blessed those parents in spite of all that,
ngoba badela ukuphila kwabo ngenxa yevangeli.
because they sacrificed their lives. They gave their lives for the gospel.
Inkulu lendaba yezigwili lapha singathi bayathandaza bayakholwa kodwa akukho lutho abanakho.
And so we can learn a lesson from all of this. Even these rich people who they pray, but they do no more than that.
eBhayibhelini siyafunda ukuthi uJesu behleli endlini yesiguli.
In the Bible, we read of where the Lord Jesus was in the home of someone that was sick.
Bezwa abantu phezu kophahla beqaqa uphahla phezulu.
While he was in this home, they heard that someone was busy undoing the roof.
Awaqalaza wabheka phezulu wavula imbobo phezulu.
And they looked up, and someone had opened a hole in the roof.
Kanti kukhona abantu abane beza nomuntu oyisidalwa ongakwazi ukuhamba baqaqa phezulu. Asazi ukuthi kwakhiwa bekufulelwa ngotshani noma ngeyitini baqaqa. Angazi ukuthi umniniyo wathini laphansi ebona abantu beqaqa uphahla lwakhe.
And they looked up, and there were 4 men who were busy dismantling the roof, opening this hole in the roof. I don't know what kind of a roof it must have been, and I don't know what the owner of the house thought. There must have been dust and dirt falling as they dismantled it.
Bamehlisa phambi kwezinyawo zikaJesu.
And then these 4 men lowered this paralyzed man down before the Lord. They lowered him down on ropes.
Angazi ukuthi lo muntu oyisigwili umnini wendlu wacabangani.
I wonder what went through the owner of that house's mind at the time.
Ethi ngoba ngayakha lendlu ngayikhiphela imali ngayikhokhela imali enkulu kodwa manje bavela bayibhoboze nje behlisa umuntu phambi kwami.
Did he perhaps think, wow, what are these people doing? What do they think they're doing? It cost me a lot of money to build this house. I put so much money and effort into it. Now they're just dismantling it.
Kodwa uJesu uma sebemehlisa ngasezinyaweni zakhe wamphilisa.
But when they had lowered that man down at the Lord's feet, the Lord healed him.
Nyabona ke zikhona izinto eziyinqaba. Singathi ku wrong kanti ku right. uJesu uyayithokozela leyo nto.
So there are some interesting things where we would think they are wrong, and the Lord is happy about it.
Abafarisi babhuqa bameyisa uJesu kodwa leyo nto yathandeka kuNkulunkulu.
The Pharisees scoffed, they derided him for it, but in the Lord's eyes it was different.
Zihlobo zami asiqaphelisise kukhona okubukekayo ngathi kube emehlweni ethu kanti emehlweni kaNkulunkulu kuhle. Qaphelisisa singaphambani noNkulunkulu.
So we need to be careful the way we see things, that we don't see things in a way that's different to God, that we actually go against God because we think it's wrong.
Kuthiwa abaFarisi babe nomona bebethanda imali.
The Pharisees were jealous and they loved money.
Lapho bezwa lezi zinto
When they heard these things,
baqala ukubhuqa,
they derided him.
basuke bameyisa bamhleka insini.
They made a mockery of him.
Asiqaphelisise ke kukhona izinto ezibukeka kabi singathi akulungile lokhu, akufanele ukuthi uqhotshwa ngaleyo ndlela, kodwa uJesu uthi kuhle.
So we need to be careful the way we see things and judge things, and that we don't just say, oh, that's wrong. And when the Lord Jesus looks at it, he says, that's right.
Lentshumayelo ke yami yanamuhla imfushane.
Today's message is short.
Ayinde.
It's not long.
Kodwa imumetho khulu. Angazi ukuthi siyakubambisisa yini lokho na.
But it contains much. I don't know whether we've grasped it.
Kazi ukuthi wena unenhliziyo yomfarisi yini noma unenhliziyo kaJesu yini.
Do you have a heart like a Pharisee's heart? Or do you have a heart like the Lord Jesus?
Wena ufana nesigwili yini.
Are you like the rich man?
Umxoshe lo muntu uthi kufanele ukuthi axoshwe. Kanti uJesu uyambonga. Uyamncoma.
You like the rich man who dismisses the man. He writes him off. And the Lord Jesus finds something good in him.
Kufanele ukuthi siqaphelisise bazalwane.
We need to be very careful, brethren.
Kukhona okubukeka kukube emehlweni abantu kanti kuhle kuNkulunkulu.
There are things which to man look wrong, and yet they're right to God and before him.
Okunye singathi hayi akuhambi kahle kanjalo. Kanti uNkulunkulu osezulwini uyathokoza ngakho.
Where we as human beings and as people would say, things are going wrong now. And yet, the Lord Jesus and God in heaven, he's happy about it.
Kusho ukuthi asiqaphelisise. Le ndaba uma uyifunda ungathi ilikhuni ayikahle. Uma kungathiwa le ndaba yendlalelwe thina singathini. Singathi inhle. Ngeke siyilahle lenceku engalungile. Sithi hayi akalungile. Bekungafanele ukuthi akwenze lokho. kodwa inkosi iyamncoma uthi lento yenzile inhle.
And if we would have been presented with this case, how would we have judged it? What would we have said? Would we have said, oh no, this man is evil, and we just stop at that? Whereas the Lord looks at it and he finds something good to say about this man.
Kuthiwa ingunaphakade kuzotholakala okuhle, abe nendawo yokuhlala, abongwe ezulwini ngalokho akwenzile. Kodwa thina bantu bokhanya siyakulahla, siyakusola.
And so for all eternity, it's recorded, there's something good written about this man. But we people, we look at it and we say, no, it's just all wrong.
Bekufanele ukuthi lona lo athandaze athi Nkosi ngiphi inhliziyo efana nenhliziyo yakho.
We each
Nkosi ngiphi umoya ofana nomoya wakho.
Each one of us should pray and say, oh Lord, give me a heart, Lord Jesus, like yours. Give me a spirit like yours.
Ngiphe umoya ofana nomoya wakho, ngize ngikholwe kuwena Nkosi, ngingaphambani nawe nanini.
Oh Lord, give me a spirit that is your spirit, that he will lead me, that I will never be at loggerheads with you.
Angazi ukuthi kusasa lethu liyoba nhloboni. Angazi ukuthi siyobongwa ezulwini noma siyosolwa silahlwe na.
What will our future be like? Will we be commended when we get to heaven, or will we be condemned?
Noma sisuke sithi ngingcono ngihlekwe abafarisi, ngcono ngibhuqwe yibona, ngcono umuntu angeyise kodwa ngibongwe ezulwini, ngcono ngilahlwe emhlabeni kodwa ezulwini ngibonke ukuthi wenze kahle.
And that I'd rather be derided here on earth, that the Pharisees deride me, mock me, but that at least when I get to heaven, there will be good words to say where the Lord will thank me and say, well done.
Shona ukuthi Nkosi ngenze ngihlangane nawe, ngibe nenhliziyo efana nenhliziyo yakho Nkosi.
That you pray.
Nkosi ngibe nomoya ofana nomoya wakho.
That you pray and say, oh Lord, make me to be perfectly one with you, that I'll have a heart like yours and a spirit like yours.
Uyithathe le ndaba yalesi sigwili nenceku yayo nokufika kukaJesu abatshele bamhleka insini bameyisa uJesu ngokubatshele indaba enjena.
Take this to heart, this story about this rich man, that steward, and also about the Lord who related the story, and then they derided him. They mocked him when he told them about it.
Uthi vasi ubenconywa abantu nabafowabo bethi hayi umfowethu uyasinakekela uyafuna ukuba sindiswe, kodwa uJesu wathi cha, banoMose nabaprofeti abezwe bona, bathi hayi uma kungavuka umuntu kwabafileyo bangakholwa. Wathi cha, noma kuvuka umuntu kwabafileyo ngeke bakholwe. Nangempela uJesu emva kweinsuku ezimbalwa nje wabethelwa, wabulawa, kodwa abakholwanga.
And this rich man in his time, people, they looked up to him for what he was. But then later in hell, he said, Father Abraham, send him to my brothers. Now you could have said, well, that is a good thing. It's commendable. He's thinking of his brothers. But the Lord said, it won't help sending Lazarus to them. Because he doesn't even hear Moses and the prophets. He won't even believe though one were raised from the dead. Sure enough, not long after that, the Lord was crucified. After 3 days, he was raised from the dead. And even then, they did not believe.
Kusho ukuthi ake sihlolisise sibhekisise ukuthi umoya esinawo umoya ohambisana noNkulunkulu noma cha, ngoba singathi singamakholwa sihambe kanti ngokuhamba kwethu sizophambana nenkosi.
So let us test and prove what kind of a spirit we have. Is it the Lord's Spirit? Are we one with Him? Or will it come out later that though we claim to be followers of the Lord, yet we weren't one with Him?
Thatha nje le ndaba kaLuka 16 uyifunde uma ususekhaya, ubuye ufunde uyifundisise uthi hawu kodwa le ndaba inhloboni mina ngithini ngayo.
So you just take Luke 16, read it, and ask yourself how you feel about it, how you see it.
Ukuthi uhambisana nalokho kushiwo inkosi noma uhambisana nabaFarisi.
Do you go along with the Lord Jesus and what He said, how He saw it, or do you go along with what the Pharisees said?
uJesu wathi abaFarisi bebesho njalo ngoba bethanda imali.
Jesus said the Pharisees spoke that way because they loved money.
Qaphelisiseke ilona lowa athandaza umthandazo ojulile ukuthi inkosi ngisize ngihambisane nawe njalo ngingaphambani nawe.
So pray earnestly and say, oh Lord, help me always to be one with you, never to go against you.